De Bloof. Destroy De Bloof. Yes, destroy De Bloof. That's a fun one to say. De Bloof. De Bloof. De Bloof. De Bloof. Hello everyone and welcome back to that one playthrough of MMORPG Tycoon 2. I am Kyle once again and we are finally back with episode 13 here. It has actually been some time since we left off, and so since then I have made a number of changes, the bulk of which actually have a lot to do with our character designs, both from player classes, monsters, some of the NPCs as well, and even a little tiny bit into the leveling system. Not too much. It doesn't change any of the experience layouts that I did in previous episodes. But just for a quick reflection, rather than a 30% bonus boost rather to each level when the characters level up, everything gets a 50% bonus now. So it's a little bit more of a difference between level 1 and level 2. And the reason I did that is because too many of the level 1 characters were able to go do some level 2 combats, and I didn't really like that. So I decided to make everything just a little bit tougher when they're a higher level, because this number applies to both player classes as well as the monsters that they're battling. If it's still not where we want it to be, I can make it, 100% more, so that way when characters, for example, go to fight level 2 monsters like the skeletons or the spiders over here, those monsters are going to be twice as strong as them, which is a good way to deter them from doing that. But I also want it to be like, if they're in a group, it's going to be easy regardless, so it doesn't really matter all that much. Before I go too deep into the player class changes, because I did some rebalancing after we noticed in previous episodes and in the 100 subscriber special that some of our classes were a little too tough. What I have done is started to do some of the detailing in my off time. So you'll notice as we go through Eastwash here, there's going to be some additional plant life and stuff. There will probably be more added as time goes on as well. The first big change I did make, however, is to the size of the player models. Not just player models, but actually all the character models. So everything is about 70% bigger, give or take, than what they were previously. I didn't like how a lot of the characters were so tiny compared to a lot of the scenery around them, so some of these doors are going to start to look a little bit more applicable to the size of the characters, and some of our characters aren't even showing up here. We've got to press play. There we go. Now they'll come into existence, and a lot of the other things like the shop stalls here look like they're more appropriate to the size of the characters now, because you can't scale a lot of these buildings, or really any of the buildings, so it just makes more sense to increase the player size, the character model size, so that way everything looks like it fits a little bit better. Good example of this is here's the tavern out by the Baron's estate. You can see the players look like they will actually fit in the doorway. Maybe they'll actually bump their head on that a little bit now that I see it. But it makes things look a little fuller too, like there's actually more characters in the world. It's pretty crowded over here anyways, but yeah, it looks like it's a little more active. That means that a lot of our enemy classes got increased in size too, so I made things like the bears bigger. You'll see when this guy spawns, this is an elite bear, and he is massive, so he's a little more intimidating, which is good. Obviously from the subscriber special, I increased the density of a lot of these places, so there's more spiders in this area, but they're also bigger to kind of correspond to the character model differences. So you'll notice the elite spider here is now mega gigantor compared to everything else, which is awesome. Back here in Eastwash, we added in some, kind of river additions here. I'll kind of turn the UI off so that way we get a little bit cooler picture here. But yeah, a lot of additions to the river here just to kind of make some things look like it was a little more alive. So there's some reeds through here by the bridge, added in some back here, not too much, and then around by our ruins, I did throw in some smaller trees to give it a little more density. There's some trees actually in our Ngari camp here, as well as a bunch of brush and stuff. So I tried to sort of kind of make the brush be realistic to what might actually happen. So my thought process was here, naturally growing things in this area are going to be kind of these curled plants that are existing a lot of times next to trees, and then any ground that's like disturbed, like by civilization or by people moving in and out, is going to get kind of more of this weed brush going on. So a lot of that through the ruins here. We'll add more as time goes on. You can see some of the density through the little town here. I added a lot more trees, some of the smaller ones. So as we walk through this area, there's a little bit more scenery. This is kind of where I cut off. I didn't go deeper than this portion. So we'll add more in as time goes on. Yeah, a few more trees through here. Trees were about all I did. So there's some more density through here. We'll add probably some pathways in to get to some of these other houses and homes. And then over here at the Loudfoot Estate, a couple trees added in. We'll put in, I think, some more stuff through here to kind of give it a little more livelihood as far as what their source of income is, what kind of industry they're a part of. Just kind of wandering around, I found Gerard, the first guy to ever hit level 2. He hasn't done much since hitting level 2. He is only got 730 experience at this level, so he's got a ways to go. But while we're following him, I got a few things I got to do. So we've got an upgrade with all the scenery and stuff I placed down. I got it up to 5.5, and then I didn't level it up again just because this is the big one. So this will be the one where we get to choose another additional big piece of our game. And I think I do want to do flight paths now, and that's because as time goes on here, it gets harder and harder. It takes more and more time to get to the next big advancement. So we're going to end up being 6.0 once we do this upgrade. But to get to 7.0, it takes even longer to get to that point again. So, and I'd like to make sure I get flight paths taken care of. So we're going to go ahead and release with flight paths, make sure those are in the game so that we have access to them. I won't add any in yet, I don't think, but we'll have those available for when we do need them, which will probably be either the next region that we create or the one after that, or I might actually end up start working on 2 regions at the same time just to kind of get things moving along. Realistically, we are only in day 4 of our game, so I'm letting it play out to make sure that we get some income, and I want to see how our area in Brightwood especially does here, holding up to all the additional players that are coming in. There's a streaming event coming up here too. Toonhole's about to stream. Checking out our new 6.0 release in a live stream. Well, that's fantastic. We'll have to keep an eye on for when he connects, because Toonhole is the first player to ever play this game. All right, let's go ahead and dive into what I changed on our player classes to start with. So to help with a little bit of the balancing and help with mostly just getting players to level up faster, I did some digging around. It seems like the thing that prevents players from leveling up fast is base speed more than anything. At least that's what I read somewhere, and it does make sense. If they have to travel everywhere, the longer it takes them to get to somewhere to complete a quest, the longer it's going to take them to level. So I actually buffed the speed on every character. The wizard here is actually one of the slowest. So if we look at the fighter, he is up to 7 on base speed. Paladin is just below 7, so it says 6, but I took it to 7 and then barely ticked it down, so he is slightly slower than everyone. And then our Angari Ranger is 7 plus a little bit, so he's actually our fastest character. And I'm starting to pay attention a little bit more to the flavor of the month tier up here. So our wizards are now a B. They're still a little on the weak side. I did make some slight adjustments to a couple of things. Ultimately, I think the wizard might have had the least amount of change to him just because he seemed fairly balanced. But we might end up buffing him slightly, depending on how upper level abilities look. He's pretty healthy at the moment. The fighter, who was completely broken, or is still kind of completely broken, I did make some drastic changes, and I kind of need to spend some time waiting to see how that turns out. We still have that big demand for nerf because I haven't let the game play out since I made these changes, but the biggest things were I changed his base rage to be higher. His health is the same, so while this might seem like a buff, what I did was I made him more dependent on his rage. So a couple of changes. First and foremost, with the sword thrust, what I did was brought the damage down to be more even with all the other characters' kind of base attack, just 1 damage, nice and simple. Now, rather than just giving him rage as a chunk, he's now going to generate 2 rage over 8 seconds, meaning that this character is now going to get, 0.25 essentially rage per second when they attack. I also dug in and did a little bit of research online. If you have abilities that are over time, they just don't stack in the current state of the game. I think the devs are have been deciding whether or not they want that to be a thing that you can change. I think it'd be cool if you had the option to decide if things stacked or not, but right now I like the fact that this doesn't stack. It just means that every time he attacks, he's just gonna kind of restart the timer on it, which is a good way to look at it, so that basically as long as he's in combat, he will automatically generate 0.25 rage every second. Now the cooldown on this is about the same as everything else. I took all the base abilities to 2-second cooldowns on pretty much every player class and every enemy, but I also gave him a 0.5 second cast time on here, so it is a little slower, it is a little bit nerfed. On the shield bash, I made some pretty drastic changes. So it used to be 1 damage, or maybe it was 0.5 at some point also, but I nerfed it down again to be just 0.3, so very little damage from the shield bash. The stun is now just 0.5 seconds, so it's just enough to kind of throw your enemy off, if you time it well. The rage is the same, and I only made this 3 seconds on the cooldown. Now the reason I did this, and this is something I'm going to keep an eye on, is if the fighter is in combat and they are taking aggro, they will gain rage, right? If they're also attacking with their sword thrust, they will gain rage. So if they are taking damage and dealing damage, they will gain a substantial amount of rage, and they will be able to use the shield bash more often because they are taking hits. To me, that seems fair. Now, if the fighter is not taking aggro and not taking damage, they will only get that minimal 0.25 rage per second, meaning that they will not really be able to use the shield bash very often. So the idea here is you kind of have to balance as the play style of, do I want to take aggro and be able to do a whole bunch, a lot more cool things and potentially be at risk of dying? Or do I just want to focus DPS, have somebody else take the aggro, and I'll just kind of be nerfed as far as the total damage output I can do? So in a PvP standpoint, the fighter's probably still pretty good. From a group fighting standpoint, you kind of have to decide how you're going to play as. You can be a little bit of the tank, but you're not going to be tanky. You're just going to be able to dish out stuns a little bit more quickly. Or do I just kind of focus on my damage? So I'm curious to see how that kind of works out in the long run. And then upper hand, their level 2 ability, this takes a lot more rage. So now again, if they're taking aggro, they're going to gain rage faster, meaning that they'll be able to do this kind of ability more frequently. They're going to deal more damage. So think of it as like the more damage the fighter takes, the more damage the fighter is able to deliver. So it's like this kind of indirect berserker type of play style. I took the weaken and actually buffed it so that now they deal an additional 25% more damage, and that was mostly because I wanted this to feel like it was a half a level's worth of a buff. So if a level gives you a 50% boost to all of your damage output and all of your health stats and everything, this will deal a little bit extra damage equal to half of a level up. And then instead of any flat damage, it's just going to do damage over time. Now 2 damage over 10 seconds is not that much, but because this is a 5-second cooldown, if this character is generating rage fast enough because they're taking aggro, they're just going to be able to do this constantly. So their damage is always buffed, essentially. And if their damage is always buffed, that means their base ability is going to do 25% more damage, which means instead of 1 damage, it's going to do 1.25 damage on every strike. Overall, the fighter's playstyles changed a little bit. I'm going to pay attention. I like the way this orients rather than them being, cooldown dependent. They're really just resource dependent. It's all dependent on how you manage rage and whether or not you're going to be taking aggro or you want to just be a side DPS dealer. The Paladin, I didn't change all that much. The biggest things were the 2-second cooldown on their base ability. It's still just going to do 1 damage. Doesn't require anything as far as resources, so he's always got something he can use to deal a little bit of damage. They are still obviously a little bit on the demand for nerf as they were before. We'll kind of see again as time plays out how that changes. Divine Hammer is a melee range now. I think I increased the cooldown if I'm not mistaken. But because this is a melee character, the idea is if this character gets on top of you, he's going to hold you down and he's going to just try and be the tank and take aggro. He doesn't have the fastest movement speed, so in a PvP situation, if you're playing as, say, a ranger or a fighter, you should be able to, keep your distance, or rather if you're a wizard or a ranger, you can kite this character in a PvP situation. But if the paladin gets on top of you, he's going to be able to do a Divine Hammer, really low mana cost for the most part, but it's going to do a little bit of damage and it's going to give him a root in place where he'll be able to root you, hit you with another strike, and then he can kind of stay on top of you a little bit so that he can avoid being kited as much. If we have to nerf some of this, I'll probably nerf the cooldown or maybe the mana cost. I think all this down here is pretty good. I want him to be like low damage-ish, but be able to do a lot of this CC utility type stuff. Then I'm pretty sure I didn't change anything really on the Blessing of Light. However, this is something I'm going to keep my eye on. If he ends up being too weak, for example, I can always up the protectability up here a little bit. It's not going to help him at level 1, obviously, but it will help him in later levels. The other thing to kind of look at, and I've been thinking about too with all of these classes, is if a character is weak, I can always make the next ability they get a bit stronger so that it kind of compensates. So whereas some characters like the fighter seem to be really, really powerful at the early levels, early game, they might kind of balance out as time goes on. Right now, he's obviously at an A tier, which I think is a good spot. The fighter is S, meaning that he is really, really strong, but again, we'll see how these nerfs play out. Now, our ranger, what I did was I increased again his speed so that they're a little faster. C tier, so this is one that I wanted to make sure that we gave some changes to, and what I wanted to do was do this one more or less live with you guys on the recording. I haven't actually changed anything on here, but the first thing I thought about, and I mentioned this in the 100 subscriber special when I played as the Angari Ranger for a little bit, I didn't like how the dagger kind of forced you to kind of come in, and it changed the play style. And I've noticed that when player characters are running around in the game, they tend to be more melee with the rangers, and you'll see like the ranger in this party is kind of probably being a little too close to everything. And I don't want them to be hand-to-hand combat. I don't want them to be melee. So he's firing an arrow, then he has to walk in, he hits with a little dagger strike. So he basically gets one ranged attack, and then he just goes in full melee. Here he is again, so he's attacking, and then he runs in. The next guy hits him with a strike. Oh, he's actually kiting back. So that's a good example of somebody playing the character correctly. And I think it just takes some time for the AI to kind of learn the best way to go about it. But that was actually a pretty decent example of how I would expect that to be played. So generally speaking, there's just a few demands for a buff, and that's kind of easy to deal with. And I have an idea. We can kind of go the direct route here and just change the damage output. And I think I might just go 1.5 damage on this. Actually, no. I'm gonna leave it as 1, and we'll up the damage over time so that there's a little bit more of secondary damage being done. So that's, 0.33 damage per second. I'm not sure exactly how the game calculates it out. It might calculate it out and round it to like 0.3, so it might end up only being like 0.9 in total. I'm not sure. But if anybody knows the answer to that, feel free to let me know in the comments. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. Actually, we'll leave that as a minor buff. The dagger strike, one thing I wish I could do is change the amount of the slow. Slows just seem to be a stagnant percentage slow. I don't know exactly what it is, to be honest. But we do know that we just slow the target for a half a second. So if we want to, we can buff this a little bit. I'm thinking like 0.7 seconds on the slow, just to give them a little bit more. These are some very, very minor buffs because, again, this character didn't really have a lot of demand for it. So we'll kind of see how that goes in the long run. And then grapple, which I don't think we have any level 2 Angari Rangers yet, but this one will definitely up the ante as far as how much this character is capable of doing. So this was meant to be a 50% buff to all of attacks, and because our leveling just went up to 50%, I'm going to change this to 25 so that when this player character ends up being utilized at level 2, it'll feel a little bit more in line with the fighter's abilities as well that got buffed. We'll bring the slider up here to level 2 so that we can see exactly what it's going to do. Actually, everything stays the same, so this doesn't really matter by level again. The mana cost, I believe, mana cost will go up, which is fine, but a root and a weaken, 25% more damage, meaning that all their abilities are going to do 25% more damage on top of whatever they're going to do at level 2 as well. So I think that's a pretty healthy little buff for this guy. We do have a space to unlock a new player character. I'm not going to do it yet. I kind of want to feel out these characters first, not just from a balancing perspective, but also from a lore perspective. Where do they fit into the world that we're creating? Because the Angari Ranger has a special name. And I want each of these to kind of have a special, not necessarily faction, but affiliation to some extent. So I'm going to kind of leave these here, and then we'll add stuff in as time goes on. Now, as far as our monsters go, again, I increased the model size of everything. I did change the spider quite a bit, so I made them a little bit more fleshed out to be more like a spider. They've got a web ability now at level 2, so when players go and fight the level 2 spiders, they're going to have to deal with a little bit of a lockdown, a root in place that's pretty extensive and annoying. More than anything, I wanted the spiders to just be an annoying nuisance rather than being something that was exceptionally hard to deal with, especially because it's the first thing most of our players are going to come in contact with. So I took the bite ability and just changed it to piercing venom. There was a really cool little icon here, I thought, for that. Minimal mana cost. It's going to do damage over time, so it's going to do 4 damage over 5 seconds, which makes it far less than 1 damage per second. So rather than just having a strike that happened every second, this is going to deal quite a bit. So I will need to pay attention to the deaths in this area, and I can always change this, either the time frame or the damage. I'll probably change the damage because I like the fact that 5-second cooldown, 5 seconds is how long it lasts. So as soon as the spider uses it again, it's just going to refresh that kind of 0.8 damage per second about of what this is going to do. Now that's the only damaging ability. The spit is just going to be a slow, and then it's going to drain mana. So this is going to be bad for paladins and wizards to deal with. They're going to get a little annoyed by it, but 1 mana over 5 seconds, really not a big deal, especially to the paladins who have a mana pool of 20. Wizards will feel it a little bit more, but it shouldn't be that drastic. And then the web lock, nice and simple, is just, again, minimal mana cost for the most part, but a root in place for 3 seconds. So these spiders are just going to start to be more and more annoying more than anything. The kobolds, all I did was modify the damage and the cooldown, so they just kind of deal less damage. So in a lot of the kobold areas, what I might do is increase the density of it so that you just have to fight more of them at once. But overall, they are not really an issue whatsoever. And they just have the 1 ability for now. I might add one in later on if we have a level 2 kobold area in a different region. But starting abilities, kobolds are just going to be this little kind of practice area for most players. The bears, I did nerf quite a bit, so they get 1 damage from a swipe every 2 seconds. The maul, what I did was try to make it excessive as far as the damage goes, but it takes a large amount of the rage pool in order to do it. So while this would be a pretty painful thing for most players to deal with, it's going to happen like once per fight, essentially, if that. And then I gave them an enrage ability, basically allowing the bear 1 time per combat 30-second cooldown, so they can only really do it once to generate a bunch of rage over 5 seconds. So if the players can kind of tackle the bears quick enough, they're really not a problem. If you let them get into a fight for longer than probably 6 to 8 seconds, then you're going to start to get into that little bit of a scared situation. I'll keep an eye on the bear region as well, because if there are a lot of deaths, I'll probably end up having to change the maul ability, because I'm already a little terrified at the fact that this is 3 damage. I don't know what I was thinking. Skeletons I had a lot of fun with, because I wanted to create something really unique in the sense of how they delivered their damage. So the rattle ability is a pretty small amount of damage, 0.8. Every 2 seconds, but it's going to keep refreshing a weaken, and a weaken that deals or additional 50% more damage over 3 seconds. Basically what's going to happen, the first attack that a skeleton hits you with is going to deal 0.8. Every single one after that point, if we just scale this up to level 2, we'll see, is going to do 1.2 damage, because the 50% weaken on the enemy, or the player for that matter, is going to equate to basically what the damage would be at level 2. So we have a pretty substantial amount of damage at the start for a level 2 character, which means actually technically, because we only have level 2 the skeleton region, we don't have any level 1 skeletons, actually means that the first attack is going to deal 1.2, the second attack is actually going to deal 1.8. So upfront damage, not super high, but then the backup damage is going to kind of keep scaling. Now again, these don't stack, so it's not like every additional attack is going to do more and more and more, and it's going to keep multiplying. It just means that the first one, not so bad, second one, a little bit worse, and then it just stays consistent at that rate. Now, Touch of Death, this is basically exactly what it sounds like, and this will probably be one that I do need to nerf at some point. And actually, you know what, I'm gonna make this upfront damage just 0.5. Actually, better yet, I might as well just remove this. This doesn't seem like it should have any upfront damage, but it's gonna take a small amount of mana. Now, granted, the skeletons don't have a lot of mana up front, I believe. Yeah, 10 mana is not that much, so they won't be able to throw down a lot of these abilities. Rattle doesn't take any. Maybe we should change that. Let's go ahead and change this to, yeah, 1's fine for now. So there is a limit to how much they can kind of do if the fight goes too long. Give the players some kind of counter ability if they survive with potions and other things. But yeah, Touch of Death, I wanted something that was basically gonna just continuously tick down on the player. So it lasts 10 seconds and it has a 10-second cooldown. So essentially every 10 seconds, the skeleton's just going to be able to refresh this, and it's always going to be dealing 0.1 damage to the player during the entire fight. So if the fight does go too long, then in theory, it's going to take its toll on the player. And we'll see just at level 2, which is the first time a player is going to come across a skeleton, it's dealing 1.5 damage over 10 seconds. So it does scale fairly aggressively as we get into higher level skeletons, which I'll probably use these skeletons as enemies in a lot of different regions and a lot of different locations. And then this one is, I wanted to make something unique because these are an undead character. So because the skeleton has 4 health, okay, it's very easy to kill especially if you hit it with a lot of upfront damage. So I figured, why not give it something that's going to create a little bit more of a resistance to just them going down so softly. And so they're going to have this undying ability, and just says you cannot kill what is already dead. So basically this is going to heal the skeleton, but it's going to heal the skeleton 6 damage over 6 seconds. So they're going to get 1 health every second. So if the player character can't really combat that 1 health every second, and they're not dealing more than 1 DPS, it's going to be a little bit of a nuisance to deal with this skeleton. And remember, the skeleton is also dealing damage over time to the player. Now the counter to this is the skeleton's only going to be able to do it 1 time. So while the skeleton has low health, you hit it with enough upfront damage, it's gone, it's dealt with. If you don't hit it with a lot of upfront damage, say somebody like the paladin, you're gonna kind of sit there in this a little bit of annoying fight where the skeleton just doesn't want to go down. Wizards should have a pretty easy time of this. They can just kind of go in, especially if they're level 2 already, they're gonna dump a spark of fireball and then their ice shard ability, and boom, the skeleton's gonna be obliterated. If they have to fight multiple ones though, then it starts to get annoying. You can see at level 2 already, this is going to go to 9 damage over 6 seconds. So the reason I made the damage, or not the damage, but the heal rather, more than what the total health of the skeleton was so that it would kind of just keep going a little bit longer than, say, even if the skeleton just healed back to full health. So if it's just 1 health for 4 seconds, or 1 health every second for 4 seconds, the skeleton would kind of not even get to full health if the player was constantly attacking them. But if the player kind of subsides their attacks, or they just can't keep up with it, it's going to keep healing a little bit beyond, like an overheal, except, you know, not actually increasing their max health. And then our bandits, I added something just a little more flavorful to what they would do. Now our bandits are going to have a strike ability. This is just normal strike ability that we're going to see pretty much any of our player characters have. Then we have an ambush ability, which I wanted to make something that was just kind of unique to the bandit, you know, something that you're going to get caught off guard, caught by surprise. So it has a weaken and a root in place. So it feels like the player's getting ambushed and getting a negative debuff because of it. And then at level 2, if they come across some level 2 bandits, which we will have scattered throughout the world at some point, as well as levels above that, every 30 seconds, basically once per fight for the most part, they're going to be able to deal a little bit heavier damage, 2 damage on a missile range ability, so that they can kind of, you know, hit the player character either up front a little bit harder, or if they are multiple bandits fighting the character at the same time, one can be more melee and another one might be more distance, and, you know, it makes a little bit more versatility for this enemy type and adds a little bit of a challenge to the players, so that they're not just dealing with the same upfront melee character that they're fighting against. Somebody else might hit them from range. You know, if you get hit by 2 damage as a wizard, it's gonna hurt quite a bit. 25% of your health gone. And then our crocodiles, give them a little bite ability, a little bit of upfront damage, 1.5 as opposed to a lot of the other base ones, but a 3-second cooldown, so it balances out. And then the secondary one is just a root in place, but it is the most annoying root in place that we have ever created, 8 seconds long. Basically the idea of going into the crocodile is gonna grab you and kind of spin you around in the water and keep you pinned down so you can't escape. So if you're a ranged character, this sucks because it's gonna be hard to kite if they get on top of you. Now, the counter to this is that the crocodile is actually one of the slowest enemies. 5 movement speed versus a lot of our other ones, like our bandit is up to 7, just like our rangers are, so they're a little bit of quicker character. Bears are a little bit on the slow side. Skeletons I made insanely fast, so you can't really escape from them. So each one kind of has pros and cons, and we'll kind of see how each of these balances out with time. Now, lastly, our town guard remained the same. I did create finally what I wanted to do for our second NPC. So this is a character that the players can't play as, but it's also not something that's going to be an enemy. This is just kind of going to be a legendary guard for the most part. And I decided to call them the Throne Watchers. And I know there's not really anything to base this off of right now, but I know that in the long run of MMORPG Tycoon 2's development, they are planning to have a kind of faction separation in the long run, so that players can play on 2 different sides of a battlefield, or 2 different sides of a map, essentially. Kind of think of like Alliance versus Horde in WoW. And so with that in mind, I wanted to create a guard class that in the future, if there were, say, raid or something that were to come into a specific area, I'd had a type of guard that was like insanely hard to take down and that you had to do as a big group. So I won't put a lot of these guys throughout the world. I think right now as it stands, there might only be 2 of them in Brightwood. I believe one of them is next to the Kobold area. He's the quest giver for the Kobold area. And the other one is Captain Nathan here by the skeletons on the spire. Crazy amount of base health, crazy amount of mana, good speed. These are well-trained elite soldiers, essentially, is what I wanted to go for. And their abilities I decided to have a little bit of fun with. They have a normal strike ability, which does a little bit more damage. Again, this is a highly trained elite outfit of soldiers. I gave them an ability called the Shield Master. Now, rather than giving them a stun like the fighter, which is what I was kind of thinking at first, I decided to go a completely different route and instead give a heal over time and a protect, similar to the Paladin. So they get one health replenished over 8 seconds, which is not that much, but this is only a 10-second cooldown, and because of the protect that's attached to this, they're going to be pretty tough to take down. The abilities after level 1, so they're level 2, 4, 6 that you can see here that I made, are where this is going to start to get really annoying if somebody does end up in combat with them. You'll notice everything takes a decent amount of mana, but because this character has a mana pool of 25, there's not going to be much they can't do. So the parry is going to deal some damage. It's going to stun the enemy for 0.1 seconds. The reason I did this is because I wanted to think of it as like a well-timed combat. So if you get stunned kind of right as you're trying to do an ability or an attack, you'll kind of get thrown off guard a little bit. And then it adds a weaken to that character as well. So they are basically, think of a parry as an attack is coming in, you swipe it away, and then you counter immediately. So it's going to stun them, expose them, and then deal some damage, which is the stun, the weaken, and then the dealing the damage. And a little bit of a lore drop here. I won't go into too much detail, but the Everstone Blessing, this is going to be something completely unique to the Throne Watchers, and it's going to apply a heal that's just a flat heal, 5 health, boom, dropped right away. And then a protect of 95% for 5 seconds. Now, the reason I wanted to do this is because I wanted them to have something that basically made them the most powerful tank in the game. Our players obviously don't have to fight against this, so it's going to be more or less part of the reason why I want to rarely utilize this NPC character. But when you do see them, as a player, oh, I'm really safe here. There's no way anything is going to take advantage of me. It's a 60-second cooldown, so again, this is something that is utilized once per fight. And then because the Throne Watchers are protectors of the people and the throne itself, I decided to give them a unique heal ability that was ranged, but opposed to just having a mana cost, it has a health cost too. So they are able to sacrifice 2 of their own health to actually apply a 2 health heal to someone else. So if they were to do this to themselves, it kind of counteracts and doesn't do anything. But if they're in a group fighting, they can actually transfer some of their health over to a companion or a player character or another NPC or whatever it might be. So the idea here is that this character has a lot of built-in heals, a lot of built-in protects, and additionally has the ability to heal other characters at the cost of their own self. So there are some drawbacks, but ultimately I made this insanely powerful just because I thought it would be fun. Now, I know that was probably a bit long-winded, but that is a lot of major changes I wanted to make sure I got across and informed everybody about, because I think it will help kind of keep the health of all the characters and the players in balance a little bit more as we move into the future regions of this world. Now, one thing I do want to do is I want to add a monster, and I have a lot of them unlocked actually, so I can go pretty deep with this if I wanted to, but there's one specific monster I want to add. And the reason I'm going to add them as a monster is because unlike NPCs, when you add NPCs to the game, they only give you more NPCs to use as trainers or guards. Actually, I don't even think you can use them as trainers. Trainers are just classes, but you can do quest givers that are guards, so a Throne Watcher or a Town Guard. You can do guards that are NPCs, they're down here. But you can't utilize these as enemies at all. I want something I can utilize as a guard, a quest giver, and an enemy if I want to. So I'm gonna put something into the monsters, and we're gonna go into prefabs because I believe there is a wolf, and this is what I want. Now, I don't know, I'm gonna scale this up a bit. Let's try 1.5, and then I wanna see how this looks character model wise compared to everything else. Not quite. I want it to be a little bigger, I think. I probably should talk about all the changes I made in here. There weren't a lot of changes, but there were some trees and some brush. So just taking a side note real quick, I added some more scenery back here behind the tavern just so there's a little bit more life to it. Our blacksmith now has a bunch of the new weapon racks which were added into the assets, which I thought were super cool. I also put some weapon racks over here by the storage place where I had all the other stuff. And then the guy that was here, that it was the Angari Ranger trainer, who I said was kind of the quartermaster, I moved him up here and I gave him his own little shooting range. So now he trains the guys up here, and there's a couple extra guards. So I thought that was a cool little addition, and he's got a table here where he takes notes and signups for people doing training, and there's a weapon rack. So yeah, just, you know, added a little more flavor to that. That was pretty cool. All the other trainers are still down here, but now, because their character models are a little bigger, they look a little bit more applicable to the size of their tents. I added in some covers here to the entryways, so it feels a little bit more connected. Put in some barriers, not that they're being utilized right now, but something to think like, oh, if they knew an attack was coming, they would just push the barriers into place, because these don't really have doors on this fort. And then I added in some extra towers here at the edge of the wall, because I thought it kind of gave it a little bit more of a temporary fortress look. Okay, back to my wolf that I was talking about. We're going to increase the size of that slightly, I think. And I know right now it says it's labeled as a cleric, but that's not what it is. Okay, it's still not quite as big as I want it to be. We're just going to max it out to 2.0. Then, yeah, I mean, that's pretty good. That's about as close as I can get. I wanted it to be pretty big compared to the character models, so that's a good start. Okay. I'm just gonna call it a wolf, because that's what it is, let's be honest. Alright, so we're gonna utilize this wolf in a couple of different ways. It's gonna be a little bit of a unique enemy. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna build off of this pathway we have leading into the Angari camp. Strategically, I want this to feel like a path that is not necessarily full of danger, but it has a lot of purpose to it. So I put each of these torch pairs across the entire thing, and there's 1, 2, 3, there should be 5 of them total, I believe, 4, and then the last one is kind of right at the break in the trees before you get to the camp. So there are 5 portions here, and each one of these is going to have a quest attached to it. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll add a quest giver, and this is going to get expensive because quest givers cost 1,000 a piece, and we're basically going to put a quest giver, or maybe not necessarily a quest giver, but at least a quest attached to each one of these, and there might be a quest giver at each one, there might not be. And apparently Toonhole logged in and then immediately logged back out, so that's interesting. So this first one here, and I want to check, because I need to change all these names. Hold on. I need to make sure everyone has Angari in their name, because that's the rules. Utilize all the generic names that are built in here. Okay, and then this person has 2 quests to start with. We'll just delete one for the time being. And his first one says, bring me more beer. That is not, again, what we will do. He wants you to go to a tavern, huh? Well, that's just not the case. Okay, so the first thing he's going to want you to do is he's going to kind of figure out whose side of the river you really feel connected to. And he's going to have you go over to, let's see if I can select him from here. Did I get him? I got him. Nice. We're going to edit this, and we're going to have him go all the way to Ronan Loudfoot. And the reason he's going to do that is we're going to call this collections. So the Angari technically control Eastwash, and as a result, they get to collect any taxes and have requirements for what it takes to live in that region. This is part of the reason why the Loudfoots do not really like the Angari, is because they used to be, meaning the province of Eastwash used to be a part of the Empire. It is no longer for specific political reasons. The Angari and the Empire have an agreement, and part of that agreement is their control now means they get to take on any taxation responsibilities and force anything upon the residents that they wish. So he's going to ask you to go collect the taxes, and we'll make this 500 on this first one, and he's going to give you a cut of the taxes you collect. That'd be funny. Now, we'll make part of the backstory here, not backstory, but some of the story involved with this quest specifically. You're going to go over to collect taxes. Ronan Loudfoot's going to be like, you can go screw yourself, because he doesn't recognize you, he doesn't know you, even though you're going to have like some kind of, not badge, but some kind of like paperwork that says you're reporting from Rorandir, I guess is this guy's name. You return to Rorandir Angari, and you tell him that Ronan decided not to pay, and so then the next quest is going to be actively go and just take what they feel is theirs. That brings us into, I'll just delete this for the time being, but that's going to bring us into what the actual industry is that the Loudfoots are a part of. The Loudfoots are ranchers. Kind of sweep some more fence around here. their property goes around the edge of the trees a little bit. And then we'll have it connect up to that corner. So pretty big plot of land. Then we'll go into NPCs. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actively make this a spider region. And we're gonna say that they're like, you know, spider ranchers. That sounds cool. Kind of line this up with the edge of the property. And we just gotta make sure to not get this zone too close to the NPCs themselves, because if we do that, then the NPCs, the guards, basically, you know, the people who live at this house, are going to start attacking their own livestock, which we don't want to happen. We'll kind of end it there, I think. And then maybe I'll kind of clear it a little bit from the road, like so. And then that way there's actually an enemy zone here, but it like feels like it has a little bit of purpose again. So again, we were using spiders as livestock in part of Brightwood, so I feel like it kind of makes sense to keep that trend going. Now these are level 3 spiders, so they'll actually be stronger than anything the players have seen thus far. And then if any spiders do drift away too far, you know, these guards should be able to handle it pretty easily. I don't think they're going to get close enough to get into combat, but just in case. So we're going to say the second quest from Rorindir is gonna be go bash the spiders. That's exactly what I wanted it to be. Except not bash the spiders, but we're gonna call this taking what's ours. He's gonna have you kill 6 spiders, and we'll give a good chunk of experience for this one too. So it'll be a big decent XP drop from this quest here. Plus the XP that they're gonna get from actively killing the spiders, which I'm not sure what it is at level 3. So at level 3, monsters are 55 XP. So if they kill 6 of those, that's gonna be 330 experience plus 1650, so a good chunk. It's pretty good little quest then. Gonna have you take the spiders and bring back, you know, their meat or something, I guess. Okay, we don't want the next one to be waste of spiders again. We want it to be something that's like, okay, we need you to kind of show some loyalty. You have decided you want to try and take this path. You have to prove to us that you can sort of belong, but also like that you can show and demonstrate some loyalty. The Angari are a weird culture that's a little bit isolationist, and they don't necessarily just let people walk in. So we're gonna call, well, I'm not gonna call it anything yet. What I wanna do is add in something. We're actually gonna add in something probably in the back corner here. Let's go modular buildings. I wanna add, again, I don't wanna delete anything, so we'll just throw this up here for the time being. Let's shrink it down. 1 square, and then we're gonna bring it down here to the edge of the estate, kind of, by this tree. Let's get rid of the edge of this just a smidge. There we go. All right, and I'm gonna add a little bit to this, so it kind of feels like a little bit of a house. We can still add doors to these. We can get some windows. That kind of works. And then in NPCs, we're gonna add another skeleton guard. And the reason I'm gonna do this is because, let's see, we'll put him there and then move him inside the building, just like we did with that other one on the other side of Eastwash. We talked about there being spirits in the forest. The Angari have a really strong connection with the forest itself. So we're gonna change this, sending the player over to our little skeleton guy. We're gonna call this the Way of the Angari. We'll make this a 500 XP dump, 0 gold. The Angari used to control this entirely, and there used to be no other residents here, and they believed in protecting this forest. And so these spirits that walk now are the ancient Angari themselves, who still hold a presence here. And so you want the player character to understand that they have a strong connection here. They've had a strong heritage back to a time long before the Empire existed, which is why they feel, one, such a strong connection, but also feel like they have complete and utter claim to the region. This is going to help the player character kind of understand that what your presence is here, you need to kind of make a choice. Like, do you believe in those who have always been here, or are you going to side with someone like the Loudfoots, who were kind of gifted this land by the Empire historically when the Empire first took it from the Angari? Okay, we're going to give him another quest, but it's going to be to kind of just send you forward. I take that back. He will have a quest to send you forward, but I I do have an idea. I know exactly what I want to do. I just need to make sure I add it in here. So he will utilize all 5 quests. We're going to call this first one, it's not going to be Kill the Spiders. We're going to call this the Trials of Angalore. And this will be kind of the first of the 5 tiers. So each of these brazier pairs that I've kind of laid out are going to be 5 trials that the player character is going to have to go through in order to advance. I'm going to utilize this little space up here. And I want to create a monster region. I'm going to make it wolves. See how far... Oh, I just created a bunch of wolf sections, I think. Go like that. Make it really tiny. We're going to make this extremely crowded. And just to keep it simple, we're going to say go here. No, not in the wolves. Stop changing my title. And we just want them to take on 1 wolf to start with. Default rewards are okay. All right, perfect. Now... we will add our second quest giver, and he's going to stand right here. I guess I got to put him off the path and then move him. You stand right there, please. And then this guy's last quest is just going to direct our players to this guy. And we're not going to discover more beer. We're just going to call this Destiny. Nice small reward because we're just moving the characters forward. And I want each one of these quest givers at each one of these pillar points is going to kind of go and send each player on like a not a grand quest, but like at least one big like combat scenario. I don't want them to do the wolves because that's what they did with this person back here. They went to those wolves. Ooh, and I should actually verify. Are these in my grid? No, not the grid. The network. That's what I wanted. And the answer is maybe not enough. Just bring this out just a smidge to make sure that that is covered. Then we'll press play again just to make sure that that gets taken care of. So hopefully that should be solved. All right, so we'll go back to Lilip. Now, what are the quests that she's gonna have our players do? I think each one should kind of do something spiritual and then something combat related. I would want to kind of utilize some different portions here to get some other things going on. And I'll kind of place things down for now, and then we can kind of pretty them up later. I'm thinking another skeleton guard kind of out here. And what we'll do is we'll end up kind of covering it up a little bit with scenery and whatnot. Actually, can I? Ooh, close to obstruction. Okay, so we can't do that, but there's a limit on how high on the mountains we can go. Let's just kind of put this one here for now, and that's at least just going to be our target for this quest giver, so we have somewhere to put it. You're going to go talk to this person, and this is Irong Angari. And this actually brings up a very interesting point, or not an interesting point, rather, just a point. A normal point is that I need a respawn point here. There's no respawn point on this side of the region. Fearless respawn point. This is a new one. I haven't seen this one yet. I got a... I mean, there's a big cross. I feel like this is like a battlefield respawn point, kinda. It's not really something that fits the aesthetic of our Angari. But really, there's not much that fits them. Not corrupted, not even civilized, not even really the elegant. I feel like we kind of have to go with the Sylvan one, just because it fits the foresty theme, even though this is a little bit too perky of a forest theme. Can I get this in a spot that's not going to disrupt my trees? Thank you. And then I'll precise move it back into position. And I'd like to kind of have, if I put it here, yeah, that's okay. That way it's off to the side, and then we can still have our little skeleton guy running around it. That works for me. Again, we will add some stuff to there. Okay, so she's going to have you go talk to that spirit of the forest. And then when you return to her, she's going to have some kind of combat. I think we should have a bandit camp somewhere in this region. Just because bandits are an easy enemy that anyone can kind of get behind. But where to put them, that is the question. So she's going to have you go talk to this spirit, and then this spirit maybe knows that there's a bandit hideout camp. But it's got to be somewhere far enough off the road that players won't really get to it on their own. Ooh, maybe we go deep over here. Got that over there. There's the ambush. Yeah, we can kind of add something in here. Although it is kind of close to this tower, and I feel like they would notice this. So I might have to kind of try and make this more hidden. One, so it fits the aesthetic of the Angari kind of knowing the region, but also, like, you know, from the grand scale of things, most games are scaled differently than reality. It's okay if these things are close, as long as you can't make visual contact. I could move this tower even further, and we can move this tower closer to this tree, maybe like that. So it's a little further away, and then for sure they won't know that the bandit camp is hiding out here. And we can put some more trees in too. We'll utilize some of the bigger tents this time. I'm gonna put one down, and then I'm actually gonna put down, I wanna see at least how tall these guys are compared to this. And that's pretty good actually, so that's fine. And this really is more or less a hideout. I don't want to give them like any infrastructure like towers or anything. But let's see, let's go routed. What does that do? Pretty good. We can actually make this a little bigger, I think, too. So let's fan that out just slightly so we can give a good amount of them. And then we're going to throw in an elite bandit in here too. Unfortunately, the elite bandits look like giants, but we can just say that, hey, we can probably just say it's a giant. That works for me. I'm cool with that. Okay, gotta find our quest giver over here now again. I think they're hiding in this group of trees. Yep, here you are. I need you. And then we'll zip back on over here. Okay, so we'll need to retitle that one, but for the time being, redirect people to you. They don't have to kill the rest of the bandits, just the big guy. De Bloof. Destroy De Bloof. Yes, destroy De Bloof. That's a fun one to say. De Bloof. De Bloof. De Bloof. De Bloof. And they'll get full experience for that. They'll change this first one to a 500. And no gold on that. And then this one, I'm gonna up the gold. Again, trying to scale the economy a little bit. Go like that. Danger, 14.6. This is gonna be a tough one to do by yourself. Okay, and then we'll retitle this one Forest Watches. A little bit of danger involved with that one. That's interesting. Okay, so we have 2 trials completed. We will make another quest giver. So let's see. She was there. We'll make the next one right here. Akulangari. Go ahead and delete the second quest for the time being. Make sure before we get too carried away, we have Lilip. He's gonna send you not to fight bandits. Gonna go report to Akul. 250 experience, no gold. Boom. All right, so each one of these trials looks like it's gonna have a good chunk of experience too. So when they get through all 5 of these, I mean, that's a pretty significant amount of the experience for this entire territory. All right, now, cool. You need to send somebody to a spirit of the forest also. So where is your spirit going to lie? Ooh, I actually wanted to put something down here. I'm not sure if players, I think players can get down here. We'll find out, I guess. Put another guard. Too close to obstruction. All right, so they don't want anything to come down here. But I was able to put the crocodile down here. So that's interesting. Hopefully players can get to that. I'm not sure. Yeah, if people come across these spirits early, they're just not gonna know what the heck they are essentially in the game, which is fine. They're just part of a quest later on. This is Pafal Angari. And I'm gonna add some stuff in around him scenery-wise at some point. I do have a basic idea of what I want to do though. So just for some visuals, so everyone's got a kind of sort of idea. I'm gonna take some mushrooms. I'm gonna scale them down. We're gonna make like a kind of like a fairy circle here. We'll kind of just make more or less a hexagon to start with. And I'll add some more to that later on for sure, but kind of the start of the visual that's going to be there. And I need to make sure I attach you to him. We're not going to go to a modular building. Or wait, where was he? He's over here. You're going to go to him. 500. Oh, not 5,000, 500. And no gold. And this is going to be Forest Listens. Okay, and then we need to have another one, and that's going to be the combat related one. And we're going to kind of have the player come forward to out here. Yeah, that's fine. Right here, kind of right in front. We're going to add an elite wolf, and this is part of the reason why I wanted to have the wolves created. And we're going to change this guy's name. All right, so we got the Forest Listens, and then you have to go take on this wolf, which we haven't really built out their abilities or anything yet, but it'll be interesting to kind of see what we do to that, to how tough that's going to be. Okay, so that is the big experience dump one. Just to verify that's all right, and we'll change this to 20. And then we need to put our next quest giver down here. And we'll get this guy's last quest attached to this quest giver so that they chain onto that one. And I don't know what did I name these other ones? I need to double check. I need to get some consistency. We have the Forest Watches, Destroy the Bluff, and oh, discover my left sock. We're just gonna call this You May Pass. And then the same for this one. Okay, so we don't want this person to start off with Massacring Bandits, but we need to have another location of a spirit. And I mean, it's maybe it's kind of mean to make people continuously go further backtracking into the region they were just walking through, but that's part of the trials, my friend, part of the trials. And I can make these more experience actually as they get longer and further deeper back to where they started. It makes sense that maybe it has a little bit more of a benefit. So I'm gonna put this next one out here. And this gives a little bit better reasoning as to why maybe Ajax is standing here. He's not just kind of guarding the area, but he's actively, you know, like protecting the fact that there's a spirit here. The game decided to name this one Ujax, so that's funny that it's Ujax and Ajax right next to each other. We're gonna go talk to him. This is gonna be the Forest Speaks. And yeah, we'll make this one 1,000. It's because they have further to go. All right, then we need a combat associated with this one as well. I'm gonna make an elite skeleton, and it'll be like as if you have to show your worthiness to the spirits of the forest. You're not gonna combat with this guy, right? You guys are too far away? That's good. All right, perfect. Not Ma Ripper. This is Bloreus and Gari. It's kind of funny that an elite skeleton at level 3 only has 18 health still. Probably do an insane amount of damage though with its DPS over time. So we're gonna add this. You're gonna have to go over here. Defeat Bloreus. I'm gonna make this higher. Let's go 2,020. So they get a little bit better as time goes on here. It says danger 0. Is it really not that hard to defeat this guy? This has got to be an error of some kind. There's definitely danger involved. Definitely danger. Okay, and then we need one more quest giver here. Again, I'm okay with using the generic names it's given me. Some of these are kind of cool. This is Skog and Gari. Make this one and its chest coin. Make this one and its quest chain. All the way going to this guy. And this will just be You May Pass again. Modify the experience again. And we'll make this 500, so it's really starting to scale up and be rewarding. Now, Skog. We're going to have the players stay here and basically do a dialogue with Skog, and he's going to explain the importance of the Trials of the Angari, why it's important to get in touch with the spirits of the forest and understand who they are, and that they were once Angari themselves, and that the Angari, to become one, is not just about serving yourself or serving your own benefits and progression through life, but it's about serving what is around you and the forest and nature itself. And so even in death, the Angari stay and protect. Change this just to 500 XP. And then this last one, we're gonna have the player report up here to the inn. And that will be the Trials of the Angari. So a couple of combat quests, couple of elites that they're gonna have to fight through. But I wanted to create something a little unique to kind of create like a you cannot enter to be, you know, either part of our faction or to even speak to our faction without going through what all of our warriors have to go through at some point in their life. Now, I'll have to do some math at some point as to the total experience that's given out in the region thus far, And we'll tweak things around a bit, but I am going to add more quests here. I think right off the bat, I do want one in town here. Put another Angari quest giver in here. And this will be kind of like a little bit fetch quests, but some fun ones that kind of get you exploring the region, see some things. And he's going to send you out to these guys. He's going to have you deliver some supplies, and he'll pay you to do it. Not 50, just 5. Deliver some supplies. One more quest that this person, I think, just sends you over to like the shopkeeper, just to kind of keep some game loops going. We want people to go sell their loot, and then they can probably find the blacksmith after that point as well. So if they need to upgrade their weapons anymore, this is a level 3 blacksmith. I don't know if that means that the weapons are better there or not. I clearly changed the price and didn't sync it, so it is more expensive to get weapons here. Whether or not they're better is hard to say. Oh, I just deleted things. Don't do that. Don't delete things. And if players are in here, they should come across the trainers if by this point they have gotten enough experience to level up to level 4, which I'm not sure if it's going to be the case yet until we do some math later. Got a pretty good, well-established questline loop now that's going to take our players all the way through the back edge, kind of the northern segment above the river in Eastwash. It's going to loop around by the estate over by the Loudfoots, and then it's going to take them down through the Trials of Angalore as they enter into this region and gain acceptance by the Angari to enter the camp. And we'll see, I think, where they lead from there, because we do have a path that continues on this way, and we'll see where that heads at some point as well. Got a bunch more quests. We'll have to do some balancing to figure out exactly where we want all of the experience points to be at. But I think for the time being, this is a good place to go ahead and end it. Got some interesting new enemies we're adding in as well. So we got some wolves. We'll see how those lead into some storylines. And we'll add some more depth to the actual estate of the Loudfoots. But folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode, going through some of the little tweaks I made through a lot of our player classes, some of our enemies, as well as the NPCs, and then adding in the really fleshed out portion of the quest lines that's going to run through Eastwash. We are almost done there. We're on the verge of finishing some things out. I might do some detailing again in between episodes, but for the time being, I am Kyle. This has been that one playthrough of MMORPG Tycoon 2, and I will see you next time. Have a wonderful day.